Welcome to the Radio Theology Podcast with Pastor Daron Earlywine, where you'll hear inspiring stories of people just like you, living out who they were born to be. Here's Pastor Daron.
I'm so stoked today to have just someone who I think is totally hand in glove into what we're trying to do with the Radio Theology Podcast and the Born to Be interviews. And it's Ken Coleman, #1 national bestselling author. He's the host of the Ken Coleman Show on the Dave Ramsey Network, on YouTube, everywhere. You got a book, Ken, that just came out this year, Proximity Principle, #1 bestseller on the national bestseller list for this year. Such cool stuff. And I'm so excited to hear a little more about your story, Ken, because I know each and every day you're helping thousands and thousands of people around the nation really discover their uniqueness and really who God's created them to be. So thanks for being on the Born to Be interview.
Well, Daron, I'm thrilled to be with you, man.
We got a chance to interact just a little bit at EdgeX when you were here in Indianapolis, and I know that was a great event. I was stoked for you guys to be a part of that one.
Yeah, it was a wonderful crowd. It was really electric that day, and a tremendous lineup. And I met you in the green room. You were hanging out there the entire day doing interviews, and you know that there was like some special vibes going on with speakers. It was really fun to not only be a part of the event, but actually to spend time with all the other speakers backstage. Some really fun relationships formed, and it was just a really, really fun day.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And Ken, you guys on your show each and every week, you're helping people get unstuck. You're helping them move towards that dream job and really to find their purpose. And so that's what we're all about here on the Born to Be podcast, and is trying to get people to understand how God's uniquely made them through the Spiritual DNA online course. And so what I love to do, which I do with most of our guests, is I want to go back to the beginning, because I really believe that God has made us on purpose and for purpose. And the cool thing about how God creates us is that the potential and the divine design that's within each one of us, it's there whether we are currently in a relationship with Him or not, which is just how gracious He is. And so I love to go back and just find the seeds of purpose and design in someone's life. And so can you take us back maybe to an early life memory? Like, is there a home video of Ken, like with a brush, like hosting his own show at like 3 years old, or like, where did you start to see that maybe this is what God put you on earth to do?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the environment, and then I'll give you a moment
Awesome.
that began to, I love that seed idea. So the environment that I grew up in, I hit the purpose lottery.
Okay.
Because my mom and dad were in ministry. My dad's still a pastor. So my entire life, my dad's been a pastor. And so I grew up in a home where there was constant reminders, intentionality to make it clear to my brother and I that we were created for a specific reason. The phrase that we used was the will of God. And so I'd listen to my dad's preaching, and every once in a while, he'd look at the young people, if we were in the service, and young people, don't you miss the will of God for your life. And I was like, oh, man, because it wasn't just the pastor. It was my dad, who I had a tremendous amount of healthy fear for,
Sure,
So I was like, okay, right. And I remember, Daron, and for a non-church person who's listening to this, you're going, okay, what does that mean? Well, good news, I didn't know what it meant either. And I don't think a lot of Christians know what that means either. It's just like, we know, okay, this is what God wants,
right,
but how do I figure it out? And if it's that big a deal, holy cow, I'm scared. Tell me how to figure it out. And interestingly enough, he would never tell me how to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I would always be wrestling with this tension of, I know this is important. I believe it's important. I want to figure it out, but I don't know how in the world I'm going to figure it out. So that's the overlay of kind of the world I'm growing up in. And by the way, adding to that, my dad's a history nut to this day. And as all of us know, when you grow up in a home, when your parents are super passionate about something, whether it be sports or history or whatever, a hobby, you either accept that, right? You take the indoctrination, you go, oh, yeah, I'm down with that. Right. Or you go, I have nothing to do with that. Well, I love history as well. And so the additional context here of the spiritual challenge that, hey, you were created to do something and you need to figure it out and you need to do it was also kind of ensconced, with this idea of history and your ability to make history and have a role in it, because I was constantly surrounded by presidential homes because we couldn't afford to go to Disneyland and all this kind of stuff. So that's the environment. The moment that God plants the first seed, that gives me an awakening at a really young age. It's funny. I would have not have answered it this way, but you led me here. And I was just talking about this the other night at dinner with my wife and our closest friends. And they had never heard the story. But I was in a Christian school and I was a kindergartner, and they had a high school play. And they needed a little kid, an elementary school age kid, to play the role of a newsboy who was essentially the lead of the play because he was in every scene, kind of throwing out papers and barking on a corner, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Murray, came in one day and she explained it to us. And it was like God put a fishing line on my arm and just, how the little kids do the obnoxious, throw their arm in the air and wave, me, pick me. And I'm telling you, that was me. And then when she said, okay, and I remember going through the auditioning process and being really fearful, terrified. What have I done? And then I got it. And I got into the rehearsals and I went, and again, I'm 5, but I remember this like yesterday. I really enjoyed it. And then the night came of the play, and I think it was only about 600 people, but I got to tell you, when you're 5, 600 people looks like 600,000.
Dude, 600 people would be terrifying for a 40-year-old.
So here I am as a kindergartner, and I'll never forget my mom. Of course, she's walking me up, and she's with me the entire moment until the play starts and gets there. And I remember being really, really excited and nervous.
Yeah.
Like, I can't wait for this to happen.
Yeah.
The story ends with me going out there and hearing people laugh at the lines they were supposed to laugh at, seeing people smile at me. And at the tender age of 5, Darren, I got really addicted to the approval.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, when they cheered for me, and I wasn't able to realize this until years and years later, what I really fell in love with was performing.
Yeah.
And so that was the early moment that I was able to go back to throughout my journey and realize I love performing. The role of having to produce under pressure is really, really central to my unique role. Now, the question, how do I want to perform? To who do I want to perform? And so that's when you get into the plan and you begin to see God's hand on me. So that's the answer. That was the first seed, really early.
Yeah. It's so common, people we talk to on the Born to Be interview, that they have that watershed kind of it's like a signpost moment. But I think most people, they don't even know how to look back that far and connect that, no, God has been, it's that's like right. Breadcrumbs along the path, right? And it's not something he's trying to hide from you. He's like, it literally, it's already in you, and you've got to just come back and walk into that. Ken, I guess as you grew up, talk about that pressure environment where your dad said, find the will of God. And I'm a pastor's kid myself and grew up in a similar home. And I know one of the fears I had, and I didn't realize this until after, is when you grow up with that kind of expectation, anticipation that I'm going to find this will. For me, it was such an image of, I always joke around, and if you remember that game show, I think it's still on, but Let's Make a Deal.
Oh, yeah.
Where it was like they had the
Monty Hall.
Yeah, Monty Hall, right? The 3 doors, and it was like you either got the new car or like the vacation or a pile of manure, right? And I remember in college feeling like this find God's will for your life deal was this huge cosmic game of Let's Make a Deal, in that at that point I didn't trust God's heart very, very well, because I thought that he was kind of really hoping I would choose the wrong door. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I didn't believe that he could be good enough to actually be guiding me from, like you're saying, from 5 years old, that some of these gifts and abilities and strengths that he's actually hardwired into my mind and in my soul, that he would have been giving opportunities for those to be awakened that early. Mm-hmm. And then he's just trying to guide me and nudge me into that. For you growing up, was that a quick study for you to really trust God's heart in it, or do you have some moments where you really found yourself maybe in a tug of war there?
That's a really interesting question. I did not experience tug of war. Number one, because I had a very blessed and good life. Did not experience much pain. My grandparents did not, I lost my grandfather, my mom's dad, when I was probably 20. My grandmother maybe a year before that. Now that I think back on that, so I mean, largely just no real emotional devastating moments. And so I didn't have to wrestle with it, right? Because I think that for any person, but certainly a young person, the old "why do bad things happen to good people" idea, that can really rock people. So I think that's the first reason why I didn't wrestle. The second reason is my mom and dad lived it out. They didn't just say it. They were the same person at church they were at home. So I didn't see any that doesn't match up. So I didn't see any hypocrisy and things of that nature. And then also, I saw the positive effects of my dad's ministry. And so I just didn't wrestle with trusting God. I was like, God, everything I'm hearing about God seems to square up.
Wow, okay.
So that would be the reason I really didn't wrestle with it. But when I got out on my own and began to experience disappointment and things of that nature and the waiting, that kind of stuff, where you start to hit the real world, that's when you start to go, okay, I got to reconcile this. And thankfully, I was able to adopt my mom and dad's strong faith and trust in God, so that when I began to experience real life disappointments and detours and all this kind of stuff, I was able to at least look back and go, okay, I have a default way of thinking here now. I just need to reconcile that, as opposed to not having any answer at all.
Yeah. One thing that the way that we say it a lot of times on the podcast, can we talk about that we know that everyone wants their life to matter, but fear is our enemy. And a lot of times what I see is that most people will experience what I call a death of a dream, where they've caught the scent of purpose of God in their life. They begin to move in that direction, and then something happens, and so many people experience a death of a dream. And I think it's in those moments that fear can really grab a hold of us and get us stuck. Do you have a moment that you could take us back where you say, you know what, that was a death of a dream moment for me?
Yeah, it was 1996. No, I'm sorry, it was 1998. And I am in politics. I'm working for the governor of Virginia at 22, just about to turn 23. And I had started in politics. That was, at the age of 16, I'm in a chapel at a Christian school, and I feel God's nudging to call me into public service. And so that was the path. And I was just absolutely dead on, and took a semester off at Liberty University in 1994 to work on a congressional race. During the summer, I had the job, but when it came time to go back to school, they offered me a full-time job on the campaign. I was like, absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Why do I want to go to school and sit in a government class when I can actually, go fight?
Yeah.
And I took that. I took a semester off. So that's 1994. That was the year of Contract for America, which was a huge deal. And in 1994, Republicans swept Congress. They hadn't had control of Congress in 64 years. So it was a monumental thing for you history people, just to kind of give you context. So all of a sudden, I'm like the real life Alex P. Keaton. I was a like a Nixon guy, but I really was. And I was that kid. Imagine that Family Ties kid. That was me.
Yeah. Did you have a briefcase?
I did. In fact, when I was 17 years old, my senior year, my mom and dad, the summer before my senior year, they got me a briefcase. And I carried to school. I just really was that. And what's funny is the reason I give myself that moniker is 3 years later, I'm working in the Virginia General Assembly as a legislative aide. And, you're just single and you're running 100 miles an hour and you're going to lobbyist dinners every night and you're getting to meet other legislative aides at your age. And they started calling me Alex P. Keaton just because could never shut up about Reagan, and I was just a Reagan freak.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, back to the story. So this moment in my life of tremendous experience, we lost our congressional race, but Republicans swept Congress. And at that point, I'm just like a hardcore Republican guy, and I was like, this is exciting. And fast forward to 1998, Newt Gingrich has a moral problem. Bob Livingston out of Louisiana was, I think, the House Majority Leader. He has a moral problem. All the stuff they said that was going to happen in 1994 with the Contract of America, they capitulated. They got whacked. Clinton just outmaneuvered them. I'm not making a political statement, folks. This is a history statement.
Yeah.
So this is what's going on. And I'm 24. And I'm watching this on election night, 1998, and they lose a ton of seats. And I'm going, what is this all about? I've been giving my heart and soul to this. Keep in mind, this is the mindset of a 24-year-old,
Sure.
Pure and idealist and all this good stuff. And long story short, it was that moment that I really began to question everything to its core. Am I really called to be in this space where I don't see integrity? I don't see principled leadership. I see a game because I had tasted it enough. I'd been working in it. And so I'm literally working for the governor of Virginia at this point. And I'm at home with my wife. We've just been married maybe 8 months or something like this. And I'm sitting there watching it. All the returns come in, and she's just flitting around the house. We don't have kids. She's doing whatever she's doing. And I'm just devastated in my living room going, what have I done? This isn't, and I mean, I felt it as real as I'm sitting here today talking to you. I was like, this is, I don't want to be a part of this. This isn't Patrick Henry. This isn't Thomas Jefferson. This isn't what I signed up for. This is awful. And what have I done? And it began a pretty quick questioning process of, if it's not this, what is it? And so I will tell you that the dream of, being a United States Senator from the great Commonwealth of Virginia, that dream died that night. No question about it. Now, I'm glad it died.
Sure.
But it certainly created a lot of confusion.
And I'm guessing with the momentum of your political party, sensing God guiding and directing you in that, and I'll say it's naivety, but it's a great youthful naivete that I think sometimes I wish, as a 42-year-old guy, I wish I could still see the world as naively as I did as a 24-year-old. But where was God in that? Because I'm guessing what I've experienced, and I've talked to a lot of people that do, is in those moments we tend to weave God's will and God's character into that dream, right? Like, he's brought me here. This is it. And this is where I see it going. So I know that's where he's taken me. And then when everything that is getting our life and a sense of identity, like when it's laying in a, kind of a smoldering heap in front of us, it's like, or a coffin, I guess you could say, it's like, man, who am I? Who is God? How do I untangle that? Was that a journey you went through?
No question about it. And I'm questioning everything. God, you gave me the desires of my heart. That's what Scripture says. So I'll tell you what it was, and I can look back on this now. So at 45, I look back on that and I go that my disappointment was God's direction.
Yeah.
So I would say that again, because I want people to really get this, because I think that if you believe God is who he says he is, well, he's not directing everything. He's really not. We don't have time to get into the theology of that, but it's my belief that he allows things to happen, and then he allows us to have a free will, and for the purpose of living out what Hebrews says, without faith it is impossible to please God. So if God is directing everything all day long, every day, there is no reason for faith.
Yeah.
That's just, this is my sugar daddy.
Sure.
That's not what the Christian life is. So with that, I'll stop there. But when I was feeling disappointed, God was in the process of, in that moment, he was directing. In that moment, he is. And I liken it to a mouse going through a maze. I don't know if you've ever seen these videos, but everybody can picture this with me right now. I want you to picture a mouse entering a little maze, a little wooden maze, right? And on the other end of the maze is cheese. He smells it. He knows it's there. He doesn't know where it is. He knows it's in there. And his instinct is leading him to the cheese through his nose. And as he's working his way through the maze, we see the mouse hit many walls. Boom, dead end. What does the mouse do? Every time, the mouse redirects. So that moment of rejection, instinctively, because he's going after the cheese, turns into redirection. He goes left, he goes right, he backs up, hits more walls. Eventually, he keeps trying things, he keeps moving. This is faith. And so I can now look back on that and go, I was, to the best of my ability at the age of 24, heeding the call of my life, and I was sensing that God had a public call in my life in politics. But I didn't know that for sure. That's what I believed. That's faith. And so what did I do? Well, Darren, I just stepped out on the path and I kept moving forward. And in that moment, that night, that was a wall. And what I mean here is God's going, all right, I'm allowing this wall to happen. I'm not necessarily putting the wall up. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I'm not worried about the theology of it, other than to say that I hit the wall. And in that moment of disappointment, God showed up because I actually went to him and said, hey, what's happening here? And over a series of years, it didn't happen right away. It was the seed of disappointment that night that ultimately led to an ultimate redirection 7 years later.
Yeah.
So, but he was directing me. He was directing my path in that moment by allowing a disappointment, a wall, to actually appear.
Did you find it hard, Ken, after that? I love that you gave the perspective that there was a 6 or 7 year, process. And I think probably if we had time to dig into it, my guess is that God used those next 6 and 7 years to mature you, to refine your character, to refine gifts, all these things, right? So there was a boot camp kind of time of that, which I've seen that in a ton of people's stories. But did you, when you came to that next opportunity to really jump into a new dream, was it difficult to trust yourself in a new dream? Or does that make sense?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. Because of the mortal enemies of dreams. And there are three, and this is who I fight. You want to know who my enemies are? This is what I fight every day on the radio live. Fear, doubt, and pride.
Yeah.
Fear and doubt are cousins. And pride, rears its ugly head. He likes to hang out with them. And so because of, number one, completely different path.
Yeah.
And so it's new, and you haven't dreamed about it for long. You haven't spent time researching it and thinking about it. Now I'm 31. I'm not 24.
Yeah.
I'm married, got a mortgage. We're trying to have kids. Like, life is really, really different. And so for all of those reasons, that's where fear and doubt, they're hanging out on our shoulders every day. They never disappear, by the way. We can overcome them, and we can learn to tell them to shut up and drown them out, but they're always there.
Yeah.
And pride. And so absolutely, I was just terrified. And without getting into the details, when I began to sense that broadcasting and being in the media, and I'm not traditional news media, obviously, but media is the platform, but I'm a broadcaster. But going that direction, when I began to really sense that was it, I sat on that for probably 2 years by just barely dipping my toe into the water and waiting for somebody to discover me, which is just a bad excuse for letting fear dominate you. So no question that was what happened to me.
Can you go back to a moment of said, that's when I jumped, or was it little nudges by little nudges? When did you finally get to say, this is it?
Yeah, well, I write about this in the opening chapter of the proximity principle, and I take the reader to the patio on in my backyard in our house in Atlanta. And I had been in a season of, I tried some things. I'd put myself out there a little bit after about 1.5 to 2 years of just dragging my feet. And then I tried some things and put myself out there, and I got rejected, and it stings and it really discourages you. And I had started my own business to be able to pursue broadcasting. So I had the ability to be my own boss and set my own schedule, knowing that was what it was going to take. And the kids were not in school. They're little. And so we had done our morning routine. I was working from the home, had an office in the basement, and I had this gorgeous little patio that faced the woods. And it was quiet. And I'll never forget, it was an April morning, cool. I could see the steam coming off my coffee. And I was out there doing my quiet time, and then sitting there just reflecting, coming out of my quiet time. And I had read a quote that morning by Wolfgang von Goethe, a German philosopher. If you can dream it, you can do it, kind of stuff. But it was basically there is power in being bold and stepping out. I'm trying to cut the whole quote down. It was a passage. And so anyway, this is in my head, and I'm laying that thought over top of my situation, and I'm rewinding, if you will, the past couple years, and I'm just disgusted all of a sudden. I'm disgusted with myself. Like, what is your problem? You've literally been sitting here waiting for God to tap you on the shoulder and hand you this gorgeous gift of broadcasting. All you got to do is open it up. And I'm convicted about this. That's why I'm disgusted, because I'm like, this is not who you are. It's not what you know to be true about faith. No one is sitting around thinking about helping Ken Coleman in his broadcasting career. This was the thought that I had. Yeah. And I say that all the time on the air. Nobody's sitting around thinking about how to help you. Yeah. They're just not. They got their own life. And you've got to step out in faith and make some things happen. And I believe that when we step out, I'm not saying that it's up to us. I don't buy into all this new age motivational crap I see all over Instagram that you're great and you're awesome and you can will things to happen. I don't believe that. What I do believe is that you have a huge part in God's hand of blessing and favor by stepping out into the unknown. So he looks at us and he goes, all right, Coleman finally got it. He's stepping out way above he's way out in front of his skis. He has no business. He's on a high wire with no safety net. All right, bingo. Now I can step in and I can move and I can orchestrate so that when everybody who knows him sees my hand of favor on his life, they go, Coleman had nothing to do with that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's my theology. And by the way, I absolutely believe that beyond a shadow of a doubt that's how God moves, because then he gets the credit. And then let's look at the people who are in my life that aren't people of faith. They look at that and they go, boy, talk about fortunate, lucky guy. And if they say that around, I go, no. Mm-hmm. And so, see, there's where God gets the glory. And God goes, all right. So that's the whole point. If you're a Christian right now and you're listening to this and you're going, I'm really frustrated at God. I've got a desire in my heart and I've got a vision, I've got a dream for it. And I believe that's of God, from God. And I believe he can do it, but he's not doing it. And I'm kind of hacked off at him. Let me tell you something right now, without knowing anything about you. If I spent 5 minutes with you privately, not to embarrass you, I would expose the fact that I believe you're not stepping out in faith.
Yeah.
You're just not. You think, well, I am. No, you're not. You may tiptoed in faith, but you better start walking and getting out there and now, not be stupid, not take some crazy financial risk that can kill you, but within good God-given sense, begin to take some steps and not know exactly how it's going to end up, but that God's put this on your heart. Then he will move for you. But you're waiting on him, and he's actually waiting on you.
That's so good, Ken. And I love that, like you're saying, it's not some crazy step. It is a crazy step, but like for you thinking about, you could look back to 5-year-old Ken and go, God was prepared. He started the preparation of this process on a stage in kindergarten, and he's been with me every step of this process. You've been able to trust him this whole life. And so, this next step may seem extreme, but when you look back and you look forward, I'm in the same lane and I've got the same, tracks, behind me. I can trust him to make this next jump.
Absolutely. Listen, when I speak to, 8,000 people 4 weeks ago in Sacramento, or I do my show today, and who knows how many people are listening live. And then I've guest hosted Dave Ramsey's show probably 50 times. You're talking about 12 million people. I have the same awesome butterflies before all of those things that I had as a 5-year-old. And to your point, if we look back and see the clues that God has given us, God gave me a glimpse as a 5-year-old of the juice that I now experience every day. He gave me just enough to let my soul feel it and go, oh, whoo. It's like that tuning fork going off inside of you. I mean, like everybody's got that. And I believe that God shows us glimpses of these things early on in to your point, in the preparation. So, I mean, there's always clues in our journey. Always. Here's why. And I want to explain this because we haven't gotten into this. I just want to give people this real quick so that I don't want people to hear motivational gibberish here.
Yeah.
Because that's not what I do. All you got to do is listen to me for 10 minutes. But let me give you all my methodology that's based on the theology you've heard us discuss. God created every person, everybody. And he created you with 2 core elements. If I cut you open down the middle, we crack you open, we're going to see talent. This is what you do best. And passion, which is what you love to do most. Talent are the tools that you use And you hone those talents and strengths into fine-tuned skills, weapons, or tools that you use to perform the passion, which is what makes your heart come alive. This is work that when you look forward to it, you get juiced. When you're in the middle of it, time seems to disappear. And when you're done with it, you look at it and you go, oh, that was so fun. And it also created a result that makes me feel tremendous satisfaction. This is of God. And by the way, if you're not a person of faith and you want to test me on this, go and on YouTube today and type in Flow, Flow, and you're going to see a guy by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And you'd never be able to say it, but I went and looked up how to say it, and I practiced it. And Hungarian psychologist who spent over 30 years studying flow, which he calls the version of ecstasy, pure ecstasy, not a drug, not a sexual thing, but a soul feeling of ecstasy. That's what the word comes from. And this happens when we are essentially in our sweet spot, which is what I use, which is the analogy of when I'm using what I do best to do what I love to do most. It's like striking a ball on the sweet spot of a bat or a racket or a golf club. What's happening? Well, anybody who's ever done it or heard anybody talk about it, it feels effortless. You don't even feel the ball strike the instrument. And then the second thing that happens is maximum efficiency. It goes faster and farther. And so this is what God has for all of us. If you believe there's a creator, and if you believe he created you, which, by the way, the psalmist says, David says in Psalm 139, that you created me. You knew my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I love that David says that. If you think about knitting, how do you knit? You got two instruments, two needles, if you will, two strands of thread, and you weave them together. This is talent and passion. So I got to share that because you've got to understand this, that there is some intentionality in your creator designing you.
Yeah.
And if you're not using what you do best to do what you love to do most in your work, which is your ministry, we were created for works, Ephesians 2:10. Nobody ever quotes that part, right? We were created for good works. Our creator worked in Genesis chapter 2. I know I'm rolling here. I'm preaching.
I love it, baby.
But in chapter 2, the creator is working. He describes work. This is the God of the universe who worked so hard day 1 through 6. He's like, I got to take a break. And so our creator worked in the beginning. Our creator still works in us and through us and does things all around the globe. And he created us to work. And so we've got to understand that the world's view of work is skewed. It's upside down. The world says you work to live. I get money from my work, takes care of my shelter, my food, my clothing, transportation, and maybe some great memories along the way. The Christ follower, the believer, says we live to work because it is through our work that we model our creator. And we are created to contribute. So I'm passionate about helping men and women discover what their contribution is, their unique role. Because you were created to fill a unique role, that means you're needed and you must do it. So I'll shut up there. But
I love it, Ken.
Here, but people have got to understand this truth. When you get to the point of understanding and believing what I just said, it's going to change your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that's what you packed the book full of it. And I want you to talk about that real quick as we come into land the plane. The proximity principle, New York Times #1 bestseller, came out in May. You've already shared a little bit from that, the story from the first chapter, but unpack some of the stuff that people, why they need to get the book.
Yeah. Well, you just heard me give you the entire philosophy methodology behind discovering what it is you're created to do. So let's just assume now that you're clear. You know what your mountaintop is. How do you get there? Now, this is what holds a lot of people back. They don't know how to get there. And the fear and the doubt and the pride will hold you in the starting block. So I wrote the book to demystify the climb up to your Mount Everest. And the proximity principle says this: in order to do what you want to do, you fill in the blank. In order to do what you want to do, you got to be around people that are doing it and in places where it is happening. So we break that principle down to a formula. The right people plus the right places equals opportunity. The right people plus the right places equals opportunity. Now, it is opportunity that is the fuel to get us up to the Mount Everest. And if you think about our country, why does everybody come to America? It's one word: opportunity. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Jefferson wrote so eloquently. So opportunity is what the pursuit of happiness is. It is the opportunity to be who I want to be. And so I'm trying to, in this book, through 5 specific archetypes of people and 5 specific places, which, by the way, are from my journey and any man and woman who's ever been successful. It's these people and these places that will help you learn, do, and connect on the journey so that you can get started, so that you can make the switch if you need to switch, or you can continue to advance. The book's written for all 3 people: starters, switchers, or advancers. And so this powerful principle, it's not new. God just gave me the word, the proximity principle, this idea. The concept's not new, but what I do is, this isn't a motivational book. It'll motivate you, but it's going to guide you through the process of identifying who are the people in the 5 archetypes and then the places. Oh, wow. Where are these type of people? Where are these places? I got to get there. And when I'm there, here's what happens. When I'm around the right people, I learn what I need to learn. I get a chance to do what I need to do, and I keep connecting with other right people. Oh, by the way, who are going to guide me to the right places. And when I'm in the right places, I meet more of the right people. And so this idea of constantly identifying the right people in the right places and then being intentional to get in proximity, this is the key to continued growth and success. Why? Back to my previous answer. To be the best you, because the world needs you to be you. Somebody out there is literally waiting to bump into you. And so there's a tremendous responsibility to figure this out. How do I get where God has designed me to be? And it's by using the simple principle that has untold power.
I love it, Ken. That's so good. As you're talking about those archetypes, it makes me think of one of the things we do in the Spiritual DNA course is let people go through a 5 voices assessment that's based on Ephesians 4 to understand that, God's made them to be either apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, or teachers. And I believe that archetype is in creation, and it's those roles that God has given us. And man, I just love it because I agree with you. This is not motivational mumbo jumbo, like you said. Like this is truly discovering who God has created you to be. And as you zero in on that, I mean, the amount of purpose and passion and peace that comes to your life is just so good. I mean, that's why we do every single episode here of the Born to Be interview. It's why we do Radio Theology. That's why Ken does the Ken Coleman Show. And if this is new to you, welcome to the future of your life and where God's directing. If it's something I agree with what Ken said, is if you're at a place that you're stuck right now, you got to take an assessment of where you've gone and what the faith what you've got it turned up to is. Have you got at 5? You got to turn the sucker up to 10 because God is directing and there's a future yet to be created that He's created you to actually bring forth. It's so good. Ken, I want to let you go because we've already had you for longer than we need. I'd love to do like 20 episodes with you because I'm so fired up.
Let's do it again.
Let me hit you with the lightning round real quick. I need a book.
Okay.
I need a band, and I need a movie that have highly motivated your life.
A book, a band, and a movie. I'm going to say a book that was tremendously practical but powerful for me. 17 years old, graduation gift from high school, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty by Harvey McKay, really teaching the practical power of connections.
Okay.
Band, my goodness. I'd have to say U2, man.
Yes.
I'm a product of that era.
Absolutely.
And I've grown up with U2, and I've been to some great concerts where I had some moments that I didn't expect to have. So I love Bono and I love U2. And then what was the last one? A movie?
Yeah.
You know what? Gosh, this is going to sound so cliche, but I can't get away from it. Braveheart will always be the most influential movie in my life. It's not my favorite movie. I'll give you a fun one because I know where you're at. You're in Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a 2-part answer. The one that has shaped me more than any movie is Braveheart. It's number 2 on my all-time movie list. But the reason Braveheart shaped me more than any movie is because when watching that the first time and every subsequent time I watch it, I'm so compelled by the good fight. What's your crusade? What's your cause that is worth giving everything you've got for? And that movie just does such a great job. And a cool backstory. I had the opportunity to get to know, and he's still a friend, the director and the screenwriter. Well, Mel Gibson directed, but the screenwriter of the movie, and got to spend time with him, and so that's always been very special to me. But to throw a nod to you Hoosiers out there, my all-time favorite movie is in fact the movie Hoosiers.
So good.
Close second. I feel like the answer to the fun question I ask a lot of people is, if you could be one character in one movie, who would you be and why? And my answer is always Jimmy Chetwood, because of the moment at the end of the game, in the state championship game. He's the decoy, and the coach is designed to play for somebody else, and the team's not sure about it, and they're looking at him, they're looking at coach, and he utters, I believe, the greatest words in the history of any movie: "I'll make it." And I love that. That resonates with me because I love the pressure. Give me the ball.
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the shot, whether I make it or miss it. I want the ball. And so I got to tell you that. So that's great. I love that movie.
I love it, Ken. So good. Ken, how can people stay in touch with you? I know they're inspired by what they've heard. They got to go get the book. I'm sure they can get it anywhere they buy books, online, everywhere. The Proximity Principle. How can they get in touch with you and stay connected?
Yeah, so KenColeman.com is how to get connected with everything. Where we're on AM, FM radio, we're on Sirius XM. We've got the podcast. We're going to be live streaming on YouTube soon. So if you want to engage on all those platforms, KenColeman.com is the place to do that. And we have a special deal. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold. We've got a special deal you can't get anywhere else right now. And it's at KenColeman.com. You get the hard copy of the book, autographed by me. You get the ebook if you like reading on a pamphlet. on a device, excuse me. And then you get the audiobook, which I read to you. All three formats, $25. Crazy deal. It's about $40 off of all three retail prices. So you can get that if you want to go to KenColeman.com.
Love it. Ken, it's been amazing. I knew it was going to be awesome. It exceeded my expectation. Thank you so much for being on the Born to Be interview today.
Well, I'm humbled by that and grateful. Let's do it again.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Radio Theology Podcast. We'd love for you to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with a friend. Talk to you next time, but until then, don't forget, God is for you, not against you. He is near to you, not far away from you, and He has created you on purpose and for a purpose. Have a great day.